everybody needs to kick fear out of the driver's seat and say, I'm driving now. I am taking over. I am not going to be afraid. I'm going to do my part. I am going to do whatever I can to drive. And it's not in a control fashion. Does that make sense? But there is
I think it's a release. I think it's a release.
a
It's
release
not a
of control. Yeah, but
It's a release of
people
control.
have
It's
to
like,
really, that's deep. It's deep. And so
yes.
people really have to think about that. Like, okay, so how is letting go of control actually being in the driver's seat?
What up, Shannon?
Hi, Chico.
And we're in the same house, but we're in different rooms
Yes, we
doing this.
are, which is good.
We found this to be more effective.
Yep, definitely.
Yes. And so I like it. Yeah, I like about what we're going to talk about today. But before, I'm going to tease the audience and tease you to see if maybe we do an episode on this. But we're not going to do an episode on this today. But I just think that this might be a good episode, especially for all
Okay.
the married couples. But we're not going to do it. I'm just going to unpack it real quick. Sleeping arrangements.
Ugh,
I am
good Lord. Yes.
I am a toucher. I am a hugger. I like to touch you.
It's going
And
to take a long time to unpack all that.
and so I was thinking maybe this is a tease for an episode
Mm-hmm.
because I like to touch you. I like to wake up. I might wake up in the middle of the night, throw my arm over you or whatever. And it's like there's been moments just this week where you just kind of shove me away.
Listen, we'll get into this, but I mean, I want to say it was in the fours probably this morning, 4 o'clock, 4:15, 4:30, in the fours a.m. And you reached over and like started like massaging my back, like kind of almost shaking me. Like,
In the middle of the night? I mean, at 4
yes,
o'clock this morning?
yes. And it woke me up. And you said something like, oh, but who doesn't want their shoulders rubbed or something like that? Like you're like, I mean, who doesn't like a massage? Like, and I was like, but you woke me up and I don't want a massage at 4:15. That's not when I make my massage appointments
And
for
I
4:15
I
a.m.
I am not your masseuse.
No, and then you just like you're like, "Oh, well," you act like I'm wrong for not receiving the gift of massage that you're trying to give me at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you're like, fine. I mean, I guess you just don't want a massage. Like, and then I'm wide awake and I'm like,
But
what,
even when I don't
what
wake you up,
just happened?
when we're in bed and we're, preparing to go to sleep, it's like you have your routine and my routine has to do with touching you. I mean, so I'm saying that might be an
I am like your
episode.
lovey. I'm like your little bear, your teddy bear lovey, like blankie, like pacifier. Like I can no longer be a part of your nighttime routine. We're going to have to break you from the habit. Like when we
I'm
cut
57 years old.
cut
I
our
don't
son's pacifier. Like it's like
know.
when I lost my blanket that I grew up with, lost it in the grocery store, and my mom broke it to me recently that it was not lost. Indeed, it was smelly and it was time to cut with it and it was thrown away and she just broke it to me. So I don't
At
care that
55 years old.
I don't care that you're a 57-year-old man. I'm going to break it to you slowly that I am sorry.
But see, I think an episode about how people sleep is in married couples is like who's the touchy feely, who's not the touchy feely.
Sure, because
I am
there's one.
totally the touchy
I
feely.
know, and there's one of each in each, cohabitation situation generally.
And
So
just how that can bring up angst. and it's
It's not always the man and the woman. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, we can break it down. The the woman is not usually, I don't think. I don't know. We'd have to like we'll do some research, take a poll. The woman's usually not the one that doesn't want to be touched, I think, but I don't know. Anyway.
but we were talking about it last night, and I looked at our 26-year-old son who's moved back in with us while he's looking for a new place, and he has a great job and everything.
I was on the couch, he was talking, and you were like petting me.
And
And
I
you were
told
like,
him
I
my
just have to
favorite
touch.
thing to do is I
Yes.
love touching your mom. And he goes, his girlfriend's name is Lily. And he goes, she likes that too. And there's just times that I just don't want to be touched.
Yeah. And
He is
I
like you.
don't throw him under the bus though, because, she may not know that and take it personally. And it's not personal because I can relate to, I'm like, yes, same. Just don't want to be touched.
So
Oh,
that's a sidebar of a possible episode. But
yes.
getting into our episode today, how do I frame this up? Now I'll frame it up, but you can come back and correct me.
Uh,
But my frame up of this is how how powerful fear is in each and everybody's life. And a lot of times we don't even realize how powerful fear is. There always seems to be something to fear, something within us, something outside of us, something around us. We create these protective shields. We have communities that, have gated communities. Everything there seems to be everywhere we look and feel is like, man, fear is a driver. Fear of finances, fear of relationships, fear of not being good enough, fear
yeah.
of rejection, fear of
Well, I mean, it's
abandonment.
it's like all the primal questions, the seven primal questions that we could. So I'm going to say the seven primal questions, which is Mike Foster's creation that I am certified in. But am I safe? Am I secure? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I successful? Am I good enough? And do I have a purpose? All of those can be based in, if you get a no to those questions, they can be based in fear. Your fear of not being safe, secure, loved, wanted, successful, good enough, and having a purpose. And then also the seven deadly sins. I think we've talked about that too. But I read a book about those two and how, it applies to women, but basically all the seven deadly sins also, if you root it down, chunk it down, it goes back to fear. Like fear, you know, of greed and sloth, and
Envy and pride and lust and
it brings up feelings of shame for women, which is based in fear of being um thought of a certain way, fear of not being seen, not being heard, fear of being abused or not recognized, or anyway, does that make sense?
yeah, that
Yeah,
makes total
so
sense. And so when we're talking about fear today, it's like what I like, from my experience from being in Alcoholics Anonymous and in, long-term recovery, I love the little acronyms for fear, FEAR, false evidence appearing real, F everything and run, you know, face, but then there's some other healthier ones, face everything and recover. It's crazy how fear, when we really think about it, is like fear that if you're a parent and you have kids getting ready to go to college. I just got a haircut, and my barber, her daughter has applied for college, and she's gotten into all these colleges, and it's good, but they're fearful of, is she going to get into the right school, is she, and she's got into a lot of great schools, fearful of how are we going to pay for it. I mean, there's fear just runs, and not all fear is bad, and we're not coming to say that fear can actually be, a motivator to get you to do something and stuff like that. But fear, when you really think about it, fear fear becomes a driver in our life. And so when I think about fear as that driver in my life, the best illustration I have when fear being a driver in my life, when it's really unhealthy and not productive and doesn't bring apart doesn't give me the direction that I need, is when I think about fear being a driver, I think about, years ago before I got sober, I got arrested several times, public intoxication, resisting arrest, assault on a police officer. All these things that I got arrested for, I'm in the back of a squad car and I'm handcuffed. And how I look at fear being that driver is like I'm arrested and I'm getting ready to go somewhere I don't want to go. And that fear is that it's like fear.
Well, and it's like future tripping. So the unknown, you are fearful of the unknown, and because it's probably not going to be great, and you have no control over it. We have no control over our future when you're in the back of a police car. I can only imagine. I've never been in one. But you would be fearful of where you're going because
Well, not even
or you
that. What
don't
I'm
know.
trying to say,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is it's like getting arrested when fear becomes that driver in your life, when your whole operating system is rooted in fear. It's like all of a sudden it's like when you're in the back of a squad car getting arrested. I got arrested for things that I did and I needed to be, but I was being driven somewhere I didn't want to go by the choices that I made. And so what I'm saying is that illustration of being in the back of a squad car going somewhere because of resisting arrest or assault on a police officer or public intoxication, I'm being driven somewhere I don't want to go by my choices. And so when fear is my driver, it's similar to that.
And that's what future tripping is. You're being
Yes.
driven by a fear. You're being driven by fear, being taken somewhere you don't want. You're being driven by fear when you're future tripping because
Yes.
you're going over all these different scenarios in your head, breaking them down. I think I guess men do it, but I think women do it a lot. They come up with every scenario, um, outcome. Like, okay, we can apply to 3 schools, but maybe we should apply to 4 because, what if you only get into 2 and then we have a choice? And then if the 2 are Ivy League, then we're gonna have to pay for it, and then we're gonna have to go and travel and like you loop, we've talked about looping.
Well, but how about this, Shannon? This is what I'm thinking of. The stories we believe, shape the fear in our lives. If we believe the story that, hey, we need to make this certain amount, have this kind of finances, live in this, area, our fear, shapes us. Our that story we believe, in order to be happy, if you look at that story, in order to be happy, I need to, buy a house in this community, raise my kids here, be involved with this, be able to make this. And so all of a sudden that fear becomes that driver that's the only way to be happy. That's the only way to be successful. That's the only way to have peace. And we need to do it this way instead of, man, how do I just just rest? How do I not let that fear drive me?
Well, and also when fear is the driver, you can't come to good solutions to the situations you're facing, whether they're problems or just decisions or whatever. When fear is driving, you don't have the clarity or the bandwidth, I guess, to come up with solutions. For example, I'm going to use the real-time example of the SNAP benefits, that we've been, with the government shutdown, there's been this shutdown of the SNAP benefits, which are the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. For those of you that are like, I didn't even know what SNAP was, but I had a lot of friends that don't have SNAP benefits, but were so worried about those people being driven by fear of other people not having food assistance. And that is a real concern. It's a concern. And we should all, as the human experience, have that concern. But my response was, okay, if we're just fearful, if we just sit back and are driven by fear of what the government is going to decide on things, like, you know, their arguments and their, decide what they're going to do, we're going to be just sitting in fear without solutions. Instead, I said, why don't we look into food drives, how we can, and then that same day that I was
Yeah, and
having the
so
conversation, yeah. So
before
go
we
ahead.
go there, I like what you're saying. Is like, SNAP benefits. We can get fearful. It's going back to the beginning of this, episode. Is like we can get fearful about things that aren't even in our control, and they consume us. And so when we're driven by fear, it can consume us when we have no control over the government and if it's shut down or not shut down, But then what we do is that fear then perpetuates and builds this case, whatever side of the aisle you're on and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
It
you
doesn't,
start spinning out of control and you don't, and all of a sudden you're being driven down places. How come? I mean, like you have control over that. What do you have control over? And that's
right.
where I'm getting in. You
That's what
getting
I'm saying.
into
If you don't,
is
yeah.
like you can get into, okay, we can go to the local food bank or Austin Street Shelter, or over at the school that our kids went to, there was the Peace Pantry. Bring food there, for kids that don't have all that. And so it's like you can do something instead of being driven by fear.
Yes, everybody needs to kick fear out of the driver's seat and say, I'm driving now. I am taking over. I am not going to be afraid. I'm going to do my part. I am going to do whatever I can to drive. And it's not in a control fashion. Does that make sense? But there is
I think it's a release. I think it's a
a
release. It's
release
not a
of control. Yeah, but
it's a release of
people
control.
have
It's
to
like,
really, that's deep. It's deep. And so
yes.
people really have to think about that. Like, how is, okay, so how is letting go of control actually being in the driver's seat?
Yeah,
So, and
and not having.
for me that's biblical. So, but that's my personal beliefs, and so whatever your beliefs are or whatever, but it's like it says 365 times in the Bible to fear not, right? Is there,
That's a command. Yeah,
do
it's
not be
fear not.
afraid.
Or
And
yes. And so
yes, and
that's a command, and it's telling you
it's
to,
not a
hey, quit.
suggestion, which
Yeah,
was,
and to
yeah.
quit wrestling with fear. Who's in charge? Who is going to be your guide, your shepherd? If we put our hope in government, man, they're going to fail us.
Well, and this isn't a discussion about government. Let's just say put our hope in fear. Like if we
Yes, but
think that the
whatever it is.
fear is serving us, right? It's such a false control. It's like getting in a Waymo. I mean, it's
But
like,
here's the deal is like, but it goes back to that, when fear is consuming us, it's like that acronym, false evidence appearing real. Like, oh no, there's 41 million people not going to get food. Really? Is there? Because there's another, 300 million that can actually provide the food. Who
well,
knows?
but and here, let's use another example also, just from our marriage so that we can kind of encapsulate everything and not get off on a total government rant because this is about fear and going places you don't want to go because you're handcuffed by fear in the back of a car. But so when we were first married, we you were in graduate school and we were paying for it. And and it was expensive because it was a private seminary. It was Dallas Theological Seminary. It's an expensive private institution. And we were pretty poor. And so uh you had because of you were being driven by fear. Should I let you tell the story, or do you want me to continue on? But we made the decision that you were going to ask your dad to borrow money just so we could kind of alleviate some of that tuition and um you know and your fear, right? And do you want to tell the rest of the story?
Yes,
You-
I do. I thought you were doing such a great job, so
well, I
that's
thank you.
really,
I was just sorry. I
really
was just
positive.
yeah.
And, and let me see if I can frame it up for that. I was driven by fear. I was working at SMU as the drug and alcohol counselor. You were working as Young Life. I'm paying for grad school, and I had paid for the first 2 semesters because I was working and you were working. But then summer school came, and I was trying to speed up the process, and I took a full load in summer school and had to put that money on my credit card. And so my fear of having credit card debt, my fear of being driven by, this what going back to the stories that I believed, and the story I believed that, any kind of debt was horrible. You need to be debt free. And so that fear, that story I believed. And then the other story is, okay, I'm newly married. I got to be the financial breadwinner. And, I was future tripping about that instead of planning because I had a
Because
plan.
you were so that the I just want to interject the facts of the matter were you were a good provider. We were debt free. I mean, except for the impending credit card charges or whatever, but we were living within our means. We were, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
there was
And
really no evidence that
we
we
did not.
needed to fear.
Well, and
I
that's
mean,
where when you said we were poor, I don't
yeah.
think we were poor. We were living, in this place. I mean, maybe technically we were poor, but we were
Well,
living in our
yeah.
means. And when I think about that,
Yes.
but the stories I was telling myself that I
Yeah.
wasn't a provider, the stories I was telling myself that we needed to be debt free, all debt is bad debt. And so I was believing all these stories and fear was driving me. And so I went to
I
my
guess
dad,
yeah, by poor, I meant we were both making below the poverty level per
but
year.
jointly, yeah,
Mm, maybe.
yeah,
Anyway, but
yeah,
yeah, it just those are just the facts. But
yes,
I had the best time of my life during that time. It was
yeah.
great.
There,
Yeah,
there wasn't,
we were
but
full. We were rich on love.
yeah, but I like this story because that fear was a driver in my life that I was looping. And so when we're talking about, how fear can become the driver and it can take you places you don't want to go, like when you get arrested and you're in the back of a squad car, you're not wanting to go to jail. You don't want to be from the consequences of your actions. And so today, what we're trying to tell people is, man, fear's going to come up. There's going to be situations. Here's this situation. We were a young married couple. I was believing the stories that I told myself that I needed to provide. I don't need to be in any debt, any of those things. So, kind of fast forward the story a little bit.
Well,
I go,
provide in a certain manner.
yes,
You were
and
telling
not to
me
be,
whatever
yeah, and
because
not to
you
be
were
debt
providing.
free.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I go, there was some conversation with my mom, but I sit down with my dad, and my dad asked me how much. He got curious with me. He didn't go right away and write a check. He didn't, say, "Hey, this is the solution." He began to really find out what was the fear and what were the messages and what is the story that, Chico, you are telling yourself. And so
Right.
there was
What was
this.
the driver? What was the
What
driver?
what
And
was the
then
driver? And the driver was false. That driver, that car I got in, I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good provider. I future trip that everything's going to be horrible. Now there's a difference between future tripping and planning. And man, he got in and really just with a few questions started asking me. I started finding out what is driving Chico? It's like, it's what is your fear? He goes, "Chico, help me understand though. You, you're getting your master's degree. This is going to open up more opportunities. So you're actually investing in yourself. You're not a good provider because you
that's
have a little
planning.
debt."
That's planning.
Yes. And so you're not a good provider. He got real curious with me that you're going to be less than those kind of things. Okay, I can write you a check. I'll pay for, this summer school. Is that going to get you to feel better about who you are? He goes, and then he came to me and goes, "Hey, I'll write you a check right now for $10,000. Is that going to make you, which would have paid for all of summer school plus given me money in the bank? Are you going to feel better about yourself?" See, I was being driven by fear and it was keeping me from doing some other things. And so when I'm being driven by fear to places that I don't want to go, it can stifle opportunities. And so
Right.
the fact that I didn't take any of the money, it opened up my opportunities to where all of a sudden I went and got trained to do interventions, and I started having a little side hustle.
It becomes
And
planning versus future tripping.
and I had all that paid off by October. This was June. I was debt free by October. By December, we had $5,000 in the bank from doing the side hustles.
Right.
And not letting fear drive me. Actually, that fear opened up the opportunity. And just like what scripture says, fear not. It's a command. Quit letting the fear. And I think what God says over and over, quit letting that fear consume you.
Don't
Quit
let the
letting that.
fear be a driver. Let the fear be a protector or a motivator. Like you said, like it is a God, fear is a God given, feeling and emotion so that we can, you know, it's like we've talked about before, you don't want to walk down a dark alley without having your gut like fear and listen to it. I mean, it's protective. Um, but yeah, you don't want it to drive. If it drives, that's the difference between future tripping and planning.
And so here's the great thing is like when I sat down with my dad and had that conversation, and I just sped it up and shared it in 30 or 45 seconds right here on the podcast. There was a lot more, back and forth and him getting curious and him saying not all debt's bad debt and those kind of things. And he has some debt that actually is going to pay off in the long run and that all this kind of stuff. But with those conversations, it helped me confess what the fear was, what the messages, what the story was behind that fear that was driving me. And I think one of the best illustrations of, confession is when you go to like an AA meeting and you sit there and you say, "Hey, hi, my name's Chico. I'm an alcoholic." That's confession. That's a radical self-awareness, honesty, and confession. It's a total surrender to, hey, the solution is God. It's a relationship with God, and and then building this tight community where you don't feel so alone. And I love it. You've said it on these podcasts and stuff like that. But there's this fear is like when I mean, one of the most attractive things with you is when you have really done the work on your codependence and you go, "Man, I'm a flaming codependent." And it's not a bad thing. It's just that confession that you get back into those patterns. I've gotten back. I haven't had a drink or a drug in 36 years, but I can get back into that that self-deprecating, maybe victim, getting restless, irritable, discontent is when I can confess those things. That fear then is, man, in a lot of ways becomes
It's driven
neutralized.
out as
Yes.
you help kick it out of the driver's seat, and so a lot of people don't have the privilege or the benefit of having a 12-step meeting type of situation where they can, I mean, in the Catholic Church, you have confession, but that's just, one person. You have private confession, with God, between you and God, and that's great, but there's something to be said about a public confession, but I think it needs to be in a safe environment, and an AA meeting is a safe environment. And so, and for those that don't know how AA meetings are run, there's no, when you share and confess things that you're feeling or thinking, there's no crosstalk. There's not someone saying, "Oh, I've been through that too," or, "Oh, you should." People don't should on you or whatever. You are able to just publicly in a safe place confess, and it's not just between you and God. It's between you and you're kinda putting it you're out loud driving out that fear actually, and
And
it's
it's not.
in a
Yeah.
public setting, but you're driving out that fear, so my suggestion is not that you go into, dinner with your girlfriends and feel like if you vomit all your confession, to the table that it's gonna have that same sort of release, like, it's coming up with this a safe place to release, but that's where recovery and doing your work and AA meetings come in very handy.
Well, Al-Anon meetings, codependent, meetings, any kind of meeting that gets you to really have that radical self-awareness, that, honesty, that confession,
Or even
the
the
surrender, but
coaching.
ultimately the surrender to God. Yes. Yeah, or coaching. Yeah, it's like getting into that place and looking at, okay, hey, I am driven by fear. And so like in our you and I do a lot of coaching with individuals and couples. It's like, hey, let's coach that person to step into and not let the fear be the driver, but just share this. Just
And it's
share that.
different than therapy, whereas it's that difference between planning and future tripping. The coaching can help you plan instead of being driven by the fear, so you can drive out that fear as a driver through coaching, or you can even pick, a couple of friends that you want to be able to share without response, just confession, like, accountability. But yeah, it doesn't have to be like a 12-step meeting or anything. I don't know. But it should be done. It
But here's the cool thing is what you and I are doing, and I'm gonna speak for both of us, is like we have the ultimate shepherd, and it's not you and it's not me. It's like our ultimate shepherd is God. And it's like when we can take that to God, just like Alcoholics Anonymous or Al Anon or any of those things say, there's 300 references in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous about God. It's not about higher power. It's about God. Man, hey, may you find him now that you need God's help. And that's what takes away the fear. Alcoholics Anonymous talks about we're driven by 100 forms of fear. They
well
give you
you
this solution.
Yeah, you don't ever have to feel alone in your fear because you have God, and that says 365 times. I don't think that's a mistake because there's one for every day, fear not. And it's not a suggestion. And that kind of just hit me this week in Bible study. I've known that. You know it. You're like, God says, do not be afraid, uh, fear not. I mean, it's all over the place. And I know that, but then it's the first time that I realized it's not a suggestion, it's, a commandment. He doesn't say, "Hey, don't be afraid if, this or that," or, you know, I don't know. It's not a suggestion.
No, but the crazy thing is, Shannon, just like you had that kind of moment in your Bible study, it's like this command, and you really saw it for what it was. It's like this command to not fear and fear not. The other thing is, all like going back to, all fear is not bad. Fear motivated me to learn how to do interventions, and then get out there and do the hustle, and begin doing that on top of grad school, on top of working at SMU as the drug and alcohol counselor. So fear is not all bad, but it says over and over in scripture 365 times, fear not. But then in Philippians 2:12, it says continue to work out your salvation with fear and
Fear and
trembling.
trembling.
And so it's like, it seems like this contradiction. But see, what I think God is saying, it's like when he's telling us to fear not, it's us getting out of the way, trying to run the show and be the director. When Paul talks about in Philippians to fear not, he's saying, continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Is that allness, that all inspiring, that place of, wow, no, God's in charge. We're really not in charge. The government's not in charge. SNAP policies, any of these things. It's like, they really, in the big picture, none of that
It's
really
noise.
matters.
It's noise.
Yes.
And so it's the working out with fear and trembling, it's listening. It's listening and knowing that you're hearing. Like if it's icy outside on the roads, you need to listen to that. Like say, do I need to get on the road? I mean, it's okay to have that's what your, little God gut and spirit tells you to know what you're listening to, what the cut out the noise and know what you're really hearing, I guess.
Yeah, and we really can't control anything. We really can't, make it cold or make it hot. We can anticipate, we can plan, we can do those things, but we're not that special. And so
Or
when
powerful.
or powerful, and so it's like, continue to work out my salvation with fear and trembling. It's like, I'm in awe. It's like, when God does also say over and over, fear not. Fear not because I'm in charge. Fear not because I got this. Fear not, you're wasting a lot of energy. And I've seen throughout my life in our marriage that I've wasted a lot of energy with fear.
Yeah.
Fear of, oh, okay, where are our kids going to school? Fear of, are they getting in the right place? Fear of getting on the right sports team. Fear of whatever, fear of, you know, starting Gaston House or Casa. It's just like, wow, I wasted so much energy in fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is wild. And so I keep going back to what do I need to do? I need to quit always believing the stories that are especially rooted in fear. The stories I tell myself, because I
Well,
get driven to this
yeah,
place.
and it's also it's like we've talked about with identifying the feelings and all that stuff. It's it's very much a checking yourself. And again, even in the Bible, it says to if you need help checking yourself, you say, search my heart, you ask God to search your heart, and then you just listen and and figure out your blind spots, all the things. But it all when fear is the driver, then you can't have growth because you're handcuffed.
I agree. And I think when fear is the driver and it's like that being in the back of a squad car, you're so consumed with self. You,
Yes.
you're so consumed with self. And
And
so all
control and maybe even self-preservation if your
yeah,
fear is that, like,
self-absorbed, but it comes out all over the place. The cool thing, the radical thing about the 12 steps and stuff, what they talked about, I think it goes right along with the Bible, is to get out of self, to work with others, to be of service, and so when I am of service, it's hard to be in fear.
because then you can see change. You can see real change, tangible outcomes. If you serve, you're going to see a change in your own heart. Usually, that's the way it goes. When you start to serve and get out of self and get out of fear, um, all of a sudden you're the one that's changed more than the people you're serving because you get to see all the you get to see the change in your own heart. You get to see the gratitude that the people you're serving experience, all the things, right?
The cool thing is, last night you didn't go with me, but Men and Nehemiah was sponsor appreciation, sponsor deal. After they did the music and everything, and one main sponsor that has all these other sponsors working with the guys in Men and Nehemiah, and he had guys come up and sponsors share,
Oh,
and then their
you mean
sponsors.
hang on. I thought you meant like sponsors, like financial sponsors of the
No,
program, but
no,
you mean
Alcoholics
there
Anonymous
are
sponsors.
yes, there are these are sponsors like I don't want to say companion, but like
No,
mentor
in
that's but
Alcoholics
Alcoholics
Anonymous,
Anonymous, you have
you get a sponsor that takes you through the steps of through the 12 steps. They
that's
they
what you're
kind of
talking about.
guide
It
you
was
and stuff like that. And so there's
I
these
was just
sponsors.
clarifying that because
Yes.
I was
And
confused a little bit.
I think
Okay.
there was 5 or 6 sponsors and then 5 or 6 of the proteges, the men that are in the program. But I loved what Jim, the main guy, the main sponsor, was asking the different sponsors, how come you do this? Over and over, the sponsors go, hey, I come down here because it keeps me sober. It's not even about that person. It's about me getting out of self, helping someone else. One of the sponsors was talking about, man, I'm new in recovery. I've completed the program. I have a year or two, and I am I hit in my car this deal, and I'm struggling financially, and my sponsee calls me, and I spend time with him. He's talking, and then all of a sudden, I get done talking to him, and I go back to where I got in this little wreck with my car. But I had future tripped. I had been so driven by fear, thinking I don't know how to deal with insurance. What am I going to do? And then I looked at it again, and it was just a little scrape with this little plastic piece. It's like the more I get out of self, things take care of. Now you might get in a big wreck. There might be a lot of crap that happens, but man, when I get out of self, it doesn't consume me. It doesn't drive me places like going to jail that I don't want to go. When I can be of service to others. And so it's like not in a codependent way, but in a way of, man, how I can hold space. And we've talked about that on other episodes. But when that fear is driving us, we forget about to fear not. We forget about, that God's in charge. We keep thinking that somehow, some way that I'm running the show, and right there in the big book, I like it. It's so simple. It says, we're driven by 100 forms of fear. And then it goes on and says self delusion, self seeking. But then right after that, the next paragraph is we're the actor trying to run the whole show, trying to arrange the light, the ballet, the scenery, the rest of the players in his own way. in trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite kind, considerate, modest, self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. You know, and the cool thing is, last night I just saw a guy that, you know, man, had major tragedy in his life. He's not an alcoholic, none of those things. And big time. I mean, the worst tragedy possible. And he looks at me and goes, "Hey Chico, will you take me through the steps?" Not because he's an alcoholic, because he wants to get out of self. And he goes, "After I do these steps, I want to help people do these steps through grief, because I got these 27, 26 other dads that just have major grief like me."
Yeah,
And
and
so, man, I'm
he wants to
excited.
confess his fear of the
Yes.
future
Yeah.
and take a hold of that and become the driver.
Yes. Instead of let the fear drive him.
Yeah,
And he wants God to drive. And I'm going, boom, we're going to make
because you
that
can get
happen.
stuck. So if fear's the driver, you get stuck. You can get stuck.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, Shannon, I'm going to confess this right now, is like, I was so honored, but my fear for a moment kicked in. I know how to take guys through the steps from alcohol and drugs. How do I take someone through the steps from this major grief? I go, okay. It was like, whoa, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna show up. I'm gonna be present. I'm not gonna pretend to show up. You can pretend to care,
Well,
but you can't pretend to show
you
up.
have to not be afraid of that.
Yeah.
Don't let fear be the driver in taking them through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, that's good stuff. So, I mean, to kind of wrap up, and I'm gonna leave people this week with what what fear in your life is driving you? Is it finances? Is it your kids and where they're going to school, or if they're getting married? Is it your
health.
is it your parents,
Yeah.
as they're aging? Is it relationship with other friends? Is it a career change? Is it addiction in your own life? What fear is driving you? Put that down and confess it. Go to someone and share that. Is it codependency?
Yes. Yeah. I'm laughing because you get closer to the microphone and you're like,
As I share,
yes. Um,
I'm
yeah.
trying
I
to.
mean,
I think it's
and
in
I
the.
think it's good to, I don't know if we've mentioned this on the podcast, but I've mentioned this, but listening to that, Suzanne Stable, who does the Enneagram stuff, I'll give her credit for this, talks about dividing life into thirds instead of halves now because you know so what are you afraid of, like the first third is like obviously before you're 18 or whatever, I don't know, and then the second third she said
No,
she
no.
does.
I think the first third is when you go through college and you're starting your career. That's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
first third.
Anyway, I don't want to she doesn't put ages on it because basically what I'm going to say is that like the second the last third could be just a couple of years. That you could be 105 or whatever. Like it could be so she doesn't want to put ages on it, but so what are you afraid of right now with the second third maybe
Of your life.
of your life? It's like there's a lot to be like. Anyway, we could go on about lots of things, but I'm afraid of getting good. This is total future tripping, and then we can wrap it up. But it's like getting good at golf and really like having some success because I love it so much now. And I started later in life and all the things. And then what if I like break my wrist? Like,
Yeah.
why am I even thinking about that? Like, okay, so you break your wrist, it gets better, and then you get back to playing or whatever. But it's what are you afraid of every day? Like, I need to not even think about those things. But anyway,
Yeah,
that
and
was just
so for everybody that listened to this podcast, and you have to listen to the end, for the challenge, for the coaching, put down on pen and paper what your fears are. You can share them with someone or not, but at least you're getting it out, and it's not so much of that driver anymore.
and
All
be
right.
honest with yourself. That's the kind of the first step is to be honest with yourself. Like, I mean, as yeah, dumb as some of my fears are super legit, for taking it down to planning purposes, and some of them are kind of silly, but
All right.
that's okay. All right.